Jesus, it's been such a long time since I've done a Tutorial Tuesday, but I'm kinda sorta back. Hey guys, I'm Rose Serpent and welcome back to another episode of Tutorial Tuesday where I completely fuck up in trying to teach you guys how to do things because I'm last minute doing everything again. So during one of my streams, I got asked, how do you draw an interaction between multiple people? Or how do you do multiple people in an illustration? Typically, I'm lazy and I don't want to do multiple people, but a lot of the times when I do multiple people, there's a story behind it, and that's something you really need to consider whenever you're drawing. So take this old bad boy, for instance. You see H2O Delirious guiding Vanoss. Like, the story I originally came up with was that the woods are dangerous. He sees this kid just wandering around, unprotected and shit. You know, it's not dark. The monsters come out after dark. You gotta be fucking careful, dude. You gotta be careful. He doesn't realize that Vanoss is actually one of those monsters. So you see him guiding him, okay? And then on the other side, you got the very fear in I can't think, the fearless or the fearful Vanoss, the scary monster. And then you have the afraid Delirious, who's terrified of this creature that has just shown up, okay? So you gotta come up with a story, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, not really thinking, but that's what I have to do every time I go into a project like this, that's so elaborate and ginormous that you have to kind of come up with an idea of what you're doing, so a story is the best way to come up with it. I'm not saying write an entire short story, but having a story behind your piece really helps you make just about any piece you're doing right now. Not just the interactions, but the interactions is especially helpful because then you kind of know exactly what's happening in the illustration, so you don't already have to last second figure out everything you're doing. So I'm sorry, but one of the main things you have to concentrate on when you're starting the line art, and I find that line art is the most difficult part whenever you're doing an interaction illustration between multiple people. And one thing you have to concentrate on for the most part is expressions and poses. I know that it's kind of difficult. You're thinking, how in the fuck am I going to be able to do this? Like, there's two people here. How do I do this? It's simple. Forget one of them exists. Do your line art for each one separately at the beginning. You'll get a hold of it eventually and you'll understand what you're doing. But do it separately. So in an illustration like this, I bounced back and forth between the two. I didn't have them in separate layers. But whenever I did do my sketch work, for every character I do, the sketch work is on a separate layer. So I advise you to do something like that if you're wanting to do that. Because I found that it helps me be able to quickly adjust the character, to quickly move the character around. If I don't like where they're sitting right there, okay, I can move them to the other side or a different side. I don't have to move the entire thing or select this specific sketch. I don't have to screw up the other sketches. I can just move it. Take the move tool, move it over, or rotate it, or, you know, I can just rearrange it how I want it if the sketch is separate. And of course, I've said it before whenever I was doing my line art tutorial that my line arts are end of story. This is it. I cannot rotate, I cannot resize, because then it ends up with a, like, how do I explain this? Fuzzy kind of line, at which the paint bucket tool doesn't fully fill what I have. So my liner is going to be different than yours. Of course, in illustration, I got lazy and I was like, screw it. I don't want to redo it. I don't care. I've drawn like 4 people. Fuck you, illustration. And that is shit that I say and do. But this one is a more intimate one, and if you're looking for a more romantic kind of illustration, this one is probably the best advice I can give you. Being able to illustrate your sketches on separate layers is especially helpful with the more contact, the more physical contact there is between characters, the easier it makes everything if they're on separate sketch layers. It just makes my life so amazingly easy. Of course, you have to figure out what characters you're using, and I assume that you already know what character you're doing, and you already have all the details, all the ideas of what you're doing. Just remember, if you want to do your line art separate on 2 separate layers, you definitely can. Just whoever is above the other one. So whatever line art is above the other one. So you can see Delirium is in front of Isabel. You can see that he's in front of her and like in the face area. So the line art there for Isabel, her line art would just be, I would turn down the opacity on that so I can see through and decide, do I want it this way or not? And then I can go in and do my fine details without being distracted. That helps a lot. Again, being able to look up the poses on Google really is a great idea. I know that everybody, people, like most other artists are real assholes, and they'll be like, no, you can't fucking do this shit. It's not good. Bad, bad, bad. Shame on you. Shame, shame. We all know your name. Shit like that. It's just a whole lot of bad news for an artist that, well, for someone who wants to do art and be serious about it. You can't be serious about art if you don't have the practice or the tools you need to do so. And the tools you really need is references. References are a huge deal. Look up pictures of couples cuddling. Be careful. Have a filter on, because I know most of you are younger, and I know most of you don't want to see specific things that happen in a bedroom. So be very, very, very careful and be very, very, very precise about what you Google. Okay? Even if you Google in cuddling, you can end up with naked people. Okay? It can end very badly. So be very, very, use with discretion. Use at your own risk. Be very, very careful what you do. There's on Tumblr, there's a bunch of reference blogs. A lot of them will only post PG items. Some of them will post the rated R stuff, but you can use Tumblr blog images. They'll put references up there, and those are probably some of the best places you can get some. Of course, if you want to pay money to get an exact reference, I believe it's Photostock, Shutterstock, it's something like that. But if you guys are kids, obviously you're not gonna ask mom, hey mom, can I pay to get a reference? If you have younger siblings, I do this a lot, where I'll have my younger sister pose for me and do specific poses, and I will take photos in different perspectives. So if I'll go on one side of her, go on the other, take a front photo, things like that. That way you can get an idea of what the person looks like. However, again, an interaction photo requires more than one person, but you don't have to illustrate them together at once. You can do separate layers, and that makes it easier on you. Another thing is coloring. As far as coloring goes, it doesn't affect how they look. It's more so the shading and lighting. If one person is over the other, a shadow is going to be casted. Yeah, I know, right? So shading is a big deal, and then of course I try to, if there's 2 people or 3 people in an image, I try not to skimp over little details, especially in an image like this where it's all about them, not about the background, and is not so severely overwhelming. But references are a great deal, and you kind of just don't think about it like, oh my god, I'm drawing everything at once. There's so many people there, I'm so overwhelmed. If there's only 3 people, it's okay. It's going to be fine. It may take you a little while. It may need a lot of practice, but it's going to be fine. Don't think about it as there's more than one person here. Think about it as there's one person here, and then tomorrow there's a different person here, and then the next day there's a whole another person here. You don't have to think about it you don't have to do it all together at once, okay? So don't be scared. But yeah, this is more of a, I know a lot of you kids want to see people kissing and shit. I don't understand it, but kids tend to draw kissing couples a lot. Holding hands is a whole other story. You can even hold your own hands and like just clasp your hands together, and you can just steady your own hands, because that is basically what you're looking at on Google, so you may as well just do it yourself. Saves you the time. It's not traceable, but you know, it saves you time, and we all like that. So this one is an example of the sketches. So the sketch work was, again, everything is on a separate layer, and you can kind of just see how everything is like shifting in different areas, and you got your shifts, you got your turns, you got your rotates during the sketch process, and then I bounce around a lot during the line art process, because there is no need to just stay focused on one thing. You don't have to be focused on one thing. Once you get tired of something, you can go on ahead and move on. It's not going to hurt you. This one is less touching, but it is 3 people, and there is different poses, and it can be overwhelming, but this is probably one of the easier things to do. I know it doesn't look like it because it's 3 people, but doing things like this where the subjects aren't touching helps a lot. And where they aren't really interacting, it helps a lot. So a lot of you guys might have an issue with drawing multiple people without interactions. Well, again, you don't have to even think about it as I'm drawing 3 people. You can think about it as I'm drawing 1 person today, I'm drawing another person tomorrow, and just get it out of your head that you have 3 people on your paper. You've only got 1 on your paper. Kind of like, I hope that I don't sound stupid, to be honest. But yeah, I think that that's probably everything I can tell you. Just be careful about your shading. Know where your lighting is coming from, and know where you're, like, if this person is hanging over the other, know if the lighting is coming from the right, the shadow is still going to hit them. Like, if the lighting's come from behind the person on top, the shadow is going to hit the person on bottom. So that is one thing you need to consider. And then of course you gotta think about I cannot think today, I'm sorry. You gotta think about all of that. So this last one was the streamer surprise, and I hated beyond belief how this turned out, but oh well. Again, each and every character was illustrated, like sketched out on a separate layer. There was 13 people on this. 13 people. God, that's overwhelming. But it's 13 people. It's probably the most interactive illustration you can do for that amount of people, because everyone is interacting, and even in their own small little groups, okay? And that is a really, like, I know that that's probably doesn't seem okay to you, but even in small little groups like that, and the interactions are between 4 different groups, that is perfectly fine. That is the same thing as what you're doing initially. Just remember, you're thinking about a story between all the characters. So what's happening? What's so interesting? What's so creepy? What's scary? What's good? You know, things like that. You need to think of your story before you kind of just go and decide this is this. I can't talk that fast, but this is this and this is this. Yeah. So just take a moment to think about what you want. I know that usually I do everything last minute, but it really helps to understand what you're doing, and it will save you a lot of time during the drawing process, because you won't be as frustrated as you typically would be if you took the time to come up with what's happening. A lot of people can probably figure out a story for each image that you illustrate, no matter what. And that is a really good thing. If you have a good background, if you have your subjects are good, if your characters are good, if things like that, if all these factors are okay and decent, a lot of people will probably see a story going on. It may not be your story, don't get upset if it isn't, but they're going to see a story regardless. So you got your trick-or-treaters here, and you got people sitting down eating candy. You got the kids playing because they're in costumes, and that's, there's different scenarios happening in one illustration, and that is a huge challenge, let me tell you that. But to help me ease some of that stress of illustrating, I actually kind of went and did a cartoony, or my version of what you would call chibi. I don't know how you spell it, or not spell it, but pronounce it. But I did my own version of how, like, the chibi illustrations, so now it helped me save time, and I didn't feel as overwhelmed. So if you draw a little bit more cartoony, it will help you save time, and it will probably help you out a little bit better. I know that it's probably not ideal, and it's probably not what you want either. It's probably not the answer you want to hear, but until you can reach a point where you're not going to stress over something, I suggest just taking it easy and relaxing before you can get a hold of your bearings. Because why stress yourself further than you already are when you can take the easy route and help yourself with, for your own health? So, yeah, I think that's everything, guys. So yeah, I'll see y'all next time.